righty. Let's dive into this next story here. If you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. That helps me out with the algorithm. Thank you so much. This next story, we have been talking about this issue with the Jeffrey Epstein lawsuit for probably the past couple of months. There's been updates here and there. Well, there is now another update in reference to this lawsuit. This is the lawsuit between the Virgin Islands and JPMorgan. Now, if you remember, the Virgin Islands basically put blame on JPMorgan, saying that they knew what Jeffrey Epstein was doing with their money, because he was their client, on the Virgin Islands, that he was participating and leading these crimes. I want to be careful how I say this, these crimes against women on that island. And they are still claiming they have proof that JPMorgan knew what the money was being used for. Well, now the Virgin Islands is actually suing JPMorgan for $190 million. This news broke the other day. Let's get into the first clip, and then I'm going to show you the response from the Attorney General of the Virgin Islands. And she has some things to say to JPMorgan. She doesn't like being lied on. Let's get into it.
All right, over to business updates. Now, our next story takes us to the US Virgin Islands, where a high-stakes legal battle is unfolding between the government and banking giant JPMorgan Chase.
Right. Now, the US Virgin Islands Department of Justice is demanding a staggering $190 million from the bank, alleging that its involvement in the notorious Jeffrey Epstein case. And according to court documents, the US Virgin Islands Department of Justice claims that JPMorgan Chase failed to adequately scrutinize Epstein when he was a client and even benefited from his abhorrent sex trafficking activities.
The battle doesn't end there. The government is also pushing for stringent measures to prevent human trafficking. Now, along with the hefty monetary demand, the government wants JPMorgan Chase to bring in an independent consultant to devise strategies aimed at preventing human trafficking. They are determined to eliminate any economic incentives that may lead to the under-reporting of suspicious activities.
I'm just going to pause here for a second, and you need to think about something. This is their island. You know, think about it. The Attorney General, the people who are from the Virgin Islands, who are residing there. This is their home. And this man came into their home and committed these illegal acts against women, and underage ones, by the way, and really gave their home a bad name. And then you have JPMorgan, which is ranked number 6 largest bank in the world, by the way, who knew about Epstein's crimes and still decided to keep him as a client anyway. So I think the Virgin Islands did the right thing. Oftentimes people just go after the accused, right? They just go after the perpetrator. Virgin Islands said, well, we're not just going to go after the perpetrator. And that was before, he died. We're going to go after the bank. And that's how you do it. You go after the one who holds the purse. And that was JPMorgan. Because without JPMorgan, he wouldn't have been able to do that. And that's what people have to understand. It's not like he just showed up one day, opened up a bank account at JPMorgan and was like, okay, Toodles. They knew him personally. This was a personal relationship. All the people who come and tell me, oh, well, Jeffrey Epstein just had dinner with them one time. It was just a business relationship. All of them? Really? Let's think about that, people. Let's go on.
Additionally, the US Virgin Islands seek to implement stricter customer verification processes, including confirming basic details before opening a private account. The government is calling for increased transparency and accountability within the banking system, determined to prevent future atrocities.
Now, JPMorgan Chase, on its part, vehemently contests the US Virgin Islands claims. The bank asserts that the government's damaging theories are misguided and intends to challenge them in court. Since the lawsuit was filed in December 2022, both parties have engaged in a blame game, each accusing the other of complicity in Epstein's sex trafficking operation. And in a separate lawsuit, JPMorgan Chase alleges that Epstein had paid the college tuition for the children of the former First Lady of the US Virgin Islands, further intensifying the legal battle here.
Very, very, very interesting. Now, I have an article that I want to go to first, and then we're going to get into that response from the Virgin Islands. Now, oh, I think I have. Oh, should we show that one first? We'll do the response first. Okay. Here is the response from the Attorney General of the Virgin Islands. Now, she gave this response a month ago because they have been battling back and forth since December of last year. But she want to let people know that she doesn't appreciate the fact that JPMorgan is trying to smear them or smear their name and make it seem like they don't know what they're talking about. Let's get into this.
Good day, people of the Virgin Islands. I want to address JPMorgan's constant attacks and blame shifting, which attack the fabric of the integrity of all Virgin Islands people. My job as Attorney General of the Virgin Islands is to represent the people of this territory and the interests of government, and to hold accountable those who violate our laws. Pursuing justice for the people of the Virgin Islands and prosecuting violations by bad actors requires following the facts of every situation to wherever they lead. Last year, new evidence emerged that, as our court filings explain, for an entire decade, JPMorgan Chase facilitated and concealed Jeffrey Epstein's heinous crimes. I want to explain to the Virgin Islands residents what that means. As Congress recognized, banks like JPMorgan are the first line of defense against human trafficking.
Yep.
They have access to real-time information about how bank customers use their accounts. As part of their access to that real-time information, banks have a legal obligation to report suspected unlawful activity, including signs of human trafficking. The evidence of wrongdoing that JPMorgan had regarding Jeffrey Epstein's activities was both unique and overwhelming. So much so that JPMorgan Chase staff frequently emailed each other about Epstein's suspicious activity, even connecting them to reports about his criminal activity.
See, mistake number one, they have emails. And I don't know when people are going to learn this lesson about the emails, okay? Emails are traceable. They have emails that prove that JPMorgan knew. This is why I was trying to tell people they would not go forward with this lawsuit if they didn't have some type of evidence. So they crossed their T's and they dotted their I's. Let's continue.
Federal law requires banks to report this type of suspicious activity to law enforcement. So it could have been in a stronger position to investigate Jeffrey Epstein for his heinous crimes and protect the women and young girls he abused. The Virgin Islands Department of Justice alleges that JPMorgan Chase knowingly failed to comply with these laws, helping Jeffrey Epstein to continue carrying out his human trafficking scheme in the Virgin Islands, as well as in other jurisdictions. We are standing up for Jeffrey Epstein's victims, for the people of this community, and for the rule of law. In 2011, the JPMorgan lead lawyer wrote to his colleagues that Jeffrey Epstein is not an honorable person in any way and should not be a client. Yet instead of following the law, JPMorgan Chase continued to treat Jeffrey Epstein as one newspaper called a star client. And the bank continued to ignore the important federal reporting requirements that could have alerted authorities to Epstein's crimes against women and young girls. JPMorgan Chase could have chosen to protect Epstein's victims. Instead, we allege JPMorgan chose to prioritize its profits. If the bank had alerted authorities, think about how many victims could have been spared from trauma and abuse. JPMorgan has no legitimate excuse for the institutional failures described in our complaints. So rather than reckon with reality and apologize to the victims, It has chosen to smear the great people of the Virgin Islands for daring to hold the nation's largest bank accountable for violating the law.
Now, anytime that you come after the banks, they're going to come for you, right? So this is what they're doing. They're trying to smear the character of the Attorney General. They're trying to smear the people of the Virgin Islands. And again, this is their home. They're not going to let somebody come in, whether it's a bank or not. The fact that there's this, this story out there that Jeffrey Epstein had this island. They said this was going on for over a decade and these acts were committed. This is their home. So of course, they're going to speak up and say, wait a minute. No, you don't look at us that way. This is not who we are. This is not what our community is about. And that's what JPMorgan should be doing too. JPMorgan should be standing up for the victims instead of spending most of their time trying to smear people in the Virgin Islands. But they're not. They're just all about money. And I continue to see Jamie Dimon go on CNBC. I can see Jamie Dimon go into all these different shows talking about his idea of the economy. They're interviewing Jamie Dimon about where he thinks, the economy is going to go within the next 2 years. But I haven't seen one of those outlets interview Jamie Dimon about this story. Even as of today, they avoid it. If you're going to bring Jamie Dimon on your show to talk about the economy, you make sure you ask him, why did his bank continue to participate and protect Jeffrey Epstein while he was committing these crimes? Not one of them will do it. Not one.
The people of the Virgin Islands should not be distracted by JPMorgan's attempt to shift blame away from its role in facilitating Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. The Virgin Islands Department of Justice will not be deterred from its law enforcement action. We will not be intimidated by corporate interests on Wall Street. We will not back down in the pursuit of justice.
We can't get American politicians to say this, by the way, that they will not be intimidated by Wall Street and corporations.
For months, on behalf of the people of the Virgin Islands, my office worked along with the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse to bring finality and accountability by JPMorgan. We are gratified that they will be compensated for some of the harm they have suffered, but there's more to be done. We continue to press our case, not just to remedy the past, but to impact the future, to impose meaningful penalties and injunctive relief that ensures that human trafficking is not merely a cost of doing business, and to make sure that JPMorgan Chase does not assist or profit from human trafficking in the future.
Okay, again, this is about human trafficking. This is a real serious issue, but there's more, because I don't know if you knew about this particular issue. It turns out that billionaire Reid Hoffman also was involved in this a little bit as well. Now, we've talked before about that black book. There have been names that have been named over the past couple of months about people who were actually in his calendar, that were part of that schedule. Noam Chomsky was one of those names that was mentioned, right? So a lot of people freaked out, when they saw that, and they're like, whoa. And also Noam Chomsky's response didn't help his case for him to say, I don't really have to tell you anything. That doesn't make Noam Chomsky look too good. But now billionaire Reid Hoffman also is being connected in reference to this as well. Now listen to this story. Billionaire who visited Epstein Island drops massive 6-figure donation backing Biden's re-election bid. Now, Reid Hoffman, he's the co-founder of LinkedIn. I don't know if everyone is familiar with him, but just another billionaire, kind of hides behind the scenes. You don't find it strange that Reid Hoffman, after it was announced that he also was on that island with Jeffrey Epstein, that all of a sudden he drops off a 6-figure donation for Joe Biden? Is he trying to buy protection? Question the timing, folks. Question the timing. Let's get into it. This is all connected. A joint fundraising committee authorized by the Biden campaign has received a massive 6-figure donation from a tech billionaire recently discovered to have traveled to convicted Jeffrey Epstein's private island in 2014. LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman donated $699,600 on April 26 to the Biden Victory Fund, the campaign's joint fundraising vehicle, according to the FEC. And this is the thing about the FEC campaign donations. Everything's reported through the FEC, so you can't even try to hide it or lie about it if you want to. The donation came exactly 1 week before the Wall Street Journal reported that Hoffman visited Epstein's private Caribbean island called Little St. James, part of the U.S. Virgin Islands, on at least one occasion in 2014. Hoffman and Epstein were planning to return to the island in November 2014 and then travel to Boston. Stay out of my city, son. Don't come here. It is unclear what the intent was for those planned trips. But the report also revealed Hoffman was planning to stay at Epstein's luxury Manhattan townhouse in December 2014 after a late arrival in New York City. And this is Reid Hoffman here on the right. Another typical billionaire. So this guy, again, dropped six-figure donation to Joe Biden after it was announced that he was also on that island with Jeffrey Epstein. His name was listed. Hoffman made headlines last month after Biden's attended a fundraiser he hosted on behalf of the super PAC at the private residence of Shannon Hunt Scott and Kevin Scott in Los Gatos, California. Hoffman told the Journal in May it gnaws him that the association with Epstein helped his reputation and thus delayed justice for his survivors. My last interaction with Epstein was in 2015. Still, by agreeing to participate in any fundraising activity where Epstein was present, I helped to repair his reputation and perpetuate injustice. Hoffman said this in 2019. For this, I am deeply, deeply regretful. And so regretful that he was willing to drop a massive donation to Joe Biden. Now, Nico had a way of framing this. I love these videos. You guys need to check these out. They're by a hotspot. So Nico does these, Nick does these. Guys got to check these out on Twitter if you see them. But check this out.
Now, I'm no conspiracy theorist, but I just find it funny that tech billionaire and founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman, donates $700,000 to Joe Biden just 1 week. Just 1 week before Wall Street Journal tells the world he was hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein on his little pedo island. So it's not strange to y'all that the same Joe Biden who will be in charge of the Justice Department that could potentially prosecute this guy got $700,000 from him for his election to secure his spot.
You don't find that suspicious? You don't find that suspicious?
Now,
That was pretty good job there. Good job, Nico. Yeah. You don't find that suspicious? Like, I'm sorry. Now, I'm not saying, but I'm just saying. All right. Thank you so much for the super chat, Nicole. Just wanted to say hi, Sabby. Got a lot of food prep to do. Can't keep up with the chat. Keep doing the damn thing. Thank you so much, Nicole. Ilhanner says nobody from JPMorgan is going to jail. America, a tale of two laws. Terry says two disgusting creeps side by side. Absolutely. Absolutely. And shout out to Robin Murphy for becoming a Sabby member. Whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. Thank you so much. Interesting story. We're going to have to keep an eye on that one. We're going to have to keep an eye on it and see where that goes. But it may take a while with that lawsuit. Sometimes lawsuits can take years, like, just to be honest. Hopefully it does not take that long, but we'll see. We'll see.